siya'y naghintay at nag-abang. Ang mga araw amin nang binibilang.
Then now we have reached this great day. Oh, our hearts cannot contain the joy we feel today. Our hearts are overflowing with gladness and joy. Nothing else to say but thank you, Lord our God. Ang luhang ito'y luha ng kagalakan. Pagkat maraming taon ang lumipas, ngunit ang mga ito mo'y di pinapahayaan. Salamat Ama sa iyong pagmamahal. Kaya't nahayag, O Diyos, sa buong sanlibutan, na ang iyong kamay ang siyang umaagapay. Maraming mga pagsubok ang pinagdaanan, ngayon ang iglesia maningning matagumpay.
Sans années de conseils, sans années qui nous a guidés et nous fortifie sans cesse. La croissance continuelle, victoire sont vraiment révélées. Tú eres quien nos sostienes, tuya la iglesia, ser parte de tu santa nación es una gran bendición. Se refleja en nuestros ojos la felicidad. Ang luhang ito'y luha ng kagalakan. Pagkat maraming taon ang lumipas, ngunit ang mga ito mo'y di pinapahayaan. Salamat Ama sa iyong pagmamahal. Kaya't nahayag, O Diyos, sa buong sanlibutan, na ang iyong kamay ang siyang umaagapay. Maraming ang pagsubok ang pinagdaanan, ngayon ang iglesia maningning
Nababanhanap ako sa tiyongahanan ng Yolina. Ngunit se come sa tuba, ese tembe so se chu kuweba. Pangako namin sa iyo, Ama, habang kami may buhay pa, dahil kami haharap sa iyo sa araw na dakila na amin inaasahan.
Heute Tränen, denn vergangen sind viele come to be is through the power of the Almighty. From the world, the church was set apart, blessed with God's promises from the start. Inside the church of Christ, come join and be part. Let God's wondrous deeds open your heart. What the Almighty God declares will surely come to pass. He willed all the success and triumphs of the Church of Christ. Why wait? Please come now, heed the call, and be enlightened by the truth. God's true love can only be found in the Church of Christ. Other religions now are downsizing. Iron doors of other churches are closing, selling the chapels that we now are buying, because the IOC is rapidly growing. What the Almighty God declares will surely come to pass. He willed all the success and triumphs of the Church of Christ. Why wait? Please come now, heed the call, and be enlightened by the truth. God's true love can only be found in the Church of Christ. What the Almighty God declares will surely come to pass. He willed all the success and triumphs of the Church of Christ. Why wait? Please come now, heed the call, and be enlightened by the truth. God's true love can only be found in the Church of Christ.
The church administration has always been very keen on remembering our church history through teaching the words of God, but also through the preservation of the church's historical artifacts, heritage memorabilia, and retelling of events, which can be experienced in the Iglesia ni Cristo Museum. These are efforts made to impart the Lord's great handiwork in fulfilling His promises to the Church of Christ throughout its history. Please join us tonight as we talk about the importance of remembering our history with our special guest. Stay with us here on UJ Radio.
ka-UJ, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. It is now, yes, 8 p.m. Unity Junction Radio, UJ Radio na. And you are watching this via our INC TV or on INC Production Company's Facebook page and YouTube channel. Hello po sa inyo. I'm Sister Bea, and of course with me up next is Kuya Kyle. Take it away.
Yes, my name is Kyle. Thank you very much for the lovely introduction, Sister Bea. It is the first Saturday of September, so let's go ahead and make this month right. I know we're still stuck in MECQ here in Metro Manila, so wherever you're watching INC TV, our families from Facebook and YouTube, thank you very much and welcome. We do have a very fantastic and special show ready for you, right, Brother Randall?
Kyle, Bea, and to all our viewers from different time zones all across the globe, once again, it's a Saturday evening. And of course, like what Brother Kyle mentioned earlier, it's the first Saturday, and tonight is a very special night for our episode. And later on, we will know exactly the reason why. And before I give back the frame to Bea and Kyle, allow me please to greet some of our viewers from Kansas, Australia po, the Kendoza family, Villegas family, Tito Cesar and Tita Evie in Long Beach, California. Hello po sa inyo. The Rancap family po from Cavite, and happy birthday, of course, to my sister Rhea and to my nanay Nitz. Ayan.
Happy birthday!
Speaking of birthday, sasalo na rin po ako. Happy belated birthday po kay Sister Jovitin. Hello din po sa mga kalokal po niya, wala po sa lokal ng Bulacan, distrito po ng Bulacan. Happy belated birthday po sa aming, syempre, Clarity Sister and ang host po ng Spotlight at saka po ng Sofla Kadiwa and Bini International Edition, Sister Joycel. Happy belated birthday po! And of course, happy advanced birthday naman po to my Lala, si Lala Francis Reyes po, na nasa Bulacan din. Hello na rin kay Lolo, kay Toti Raydan, kay Tita Ems, and kay Red. Hello, hello!
All right. Also, just one. Hi, Mom, on the locale of Clarkview, Pampanga. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Now, today, our theme for today is why we remember our church history. And I want to ask our hosts first if they've ever been to the INC Museum and what do you remember from being at the INC Museum?
I'll go first kasi mas maganda yung kwento ni Kuya Randall eh. Mas maganda yung kanya. So I'll do it first. So back then before all of this happened, so we have Balikbayan Day, and that's how we got to visit and see the new INC Museum. So yun, well, I have yet to go around po in all of the 4 floors of the INC Museum as soon as po pwede na. But Kuya Randall, I think your story will be better sounding para sa ating mga guests, viewers. So Kuya Randall.
I recall. I think I was able to visit it 3 times, if I do recall correctly. The first time was when we were preparing for the reception of our wedding. Because for everybody's information po, the INC Museum isn't just merely a museum, but at the same time, it's allowed to make use of the place for a venue. Yeah. So the second time was, in fact, when I was there with my cousins, I took them there for them to personally see the tangible things about the Iglesia ni Cristo. Because we've been studying the history of the church, and it's more of the biblical way, yung mga pagsamba natin, and it's also studied through our doctrinal lessons. But this time, kakaiba po ang naging experience nila. And of course, the third and the last time, perhaps this was almost 2 years ago, was during our reception.
Wow, now I know that we can have events like a wedding reception at the INC Museum. That's, as a single brother, that's something I'm definitely going to be keeping in mind. Also, Sister Bea as well. If I remember mine, right? My last was also my first time visiting the INC Museum. It was right after EBC's PopCon, Pop Culture Convention, way back 2019. And if you've been around our area, of course, we have EBC, and then right next to it is the INC Museum. 4 floors. There's everything there. There's an area for kids. There's an area for eating, a cafe, of course, for taking things back to your family to show that you've been to the INC Museum, and of course, all of the content and all of our history inside this magnificent building is the best that I can come up with right now, right, Brother Randall?
Yep, and of course, Brother Kyle and Sister Bea, kung meron man tayong dapat tanungin To be the best person to talk about the museum, of course, let me introduce our guest for tonight. That could be no other, there could no other be better than, of course, the minister of the gospel who's currently assigned at the INC Museum. Please welcome po, Brother Cornelio Cortez Jr. Hello po.
Hello po,
Hello.
good evening po to all.
Welcome po
thank you
to
for
the
having me
show.
Kamusta po, Kajun?
I'm good po. Salamat po sa Diyos.
Alright.
Kajun, I have one question first to start off our conversation very lightheartedly. Your background, that's the real background. It's not a photo, right?
Yes, this is the actual museum
Wow.
and we are at the lobby.
So for those of us who haven't visited the museum with our own eyes and ears and haven't seen the virtual tour yet, the lobby is an open space lobby. Maybe that's what we could call it, Kajun. Is you step inside the building and you're surrounded by a huge space. It's very awe-inspiring.
Yes.
It's quite open and then there are some architectural designs which you could also appreciate.
Brother Kyle, before it came to this museum that we now know and exist, bago po naging ganito museum na to, tonight we will find out and we will personally hear po from Brother June how this museum came to be. Nagsimula ba ito saan at paano nauwi sa ganitong kalagayan ngayon?
Exactly. Yes.
It started way back 1981. Mayroong isang exhibit na pinamagatang Ang Hinirang, The Chosen. That exhibit was installed at the hallway of the Central Annex building in our central office. It was inaugurated January 2nd, 1981 by then the Executive Minister, Brother Manalo. And then on that very day, he made a promise. Nangako siya na magtitindig o gagawa ng isang dedicated area, gusali kung maaari, para maging repository ng mga historical memorabilia, artifacts, na malaki ang kinalaman sa kasaysayan ng iglesia. So that history or that exhibit was made open to all those who are going to the central office during that time, 1981, January 2nd, and it ran for some years, 1 or 2 years.
Okay po. Before we continue po doon po sa parang pinaka-timeline, meron po kasi syempre mga kasunod niya, nagbanggit na po kayo ng petsa. Bukod po sa, ito po ay nagtatagpo ng ganito pong aktibidad back then, no? Isa pong exhibit. Bakit po? Ano po bang objective po ng pamamahala? Which we know for sure, ito rin po yung objective ng pamamahala po natin ngayon. Why are they very eager po na magkaroon po ng ganito pong exhibit at ngayon po building na nga po that is dedicated for yun po mga church artifacts po natin?
The main objective of the church administration is to hand down the history of the church from the very beginning, from the time of Brother Felix Manalo. We can see clearly in our history how God worked for the victory and the triumph that the church is now reaping. And through that objective, this museum was conceptualized by the church administration that could be a tool for the members and even non-members to make known to them the history of the church and the fulfillment of all the prophecies of God. Yun po yun, Kabea.
Napakaano po. Kasi po, kumbaga po, di ba, isa nga pong magandang, pinakamagandang paraan, halimbawa po, meron po tayong inaakay, is for them to see something tangible, something po na po pwede nilang hawakan o makita ng kanila pong mga mata. Of course, if it's just word of mouth o ikikwento po natin, it could be enough, but it would be more kung meron po silang makikita. Kaya po, ayun, that's why I asked that question. So anyways po, after that exhibit gallery po in 1981, what happened po a few years after po?
Just 3 years after that, during the inauguration or the dedication ng templo,
Opo.
July 28, 1984. After the dedication, the INC Museum and Gallery was inaugurated by Kaisa Manalo right after the dedication of the Central Temple. That
Alright.
museum was situated at the front of the temple, formerly called the foyer of the temple then, and then it was converted into a museum and gallery, that very area. And you can see in the video the grand lobby also of the old INC Museum and Gallery.
Ayan po, nakikita po natin sa video up there po. Yan po siya. Yan po yung ating INC Museum and Gallery dati.
Opo, ang museum po na yan ay naglingkod sa mga kapatid natin at sa mga hindi kapatid for 35 years.
Wow.
From 1984 to 2019.
And of course, come 2019 po, eto na po yung bago po nating INC Museum.
Opo.
So, from there po, could you tell us a bit about that po? Ano po nangyari nung pong inauguration po nun? Mga preparation po ninyo? Kasi po, from what we know, na-assign na po kayo po dun po sa ating INC Museum and Gallery even before. Yes po.
Yes. During the preparation for the inauguration, marami kaming mga magkakasamang gumagawa rito. Ang mga panahon na yun ay kasama pa namin ang dating nakatalaga na siyang direktor, ang kapatid na True Santos. There were many sleepless nights na kailangan naming pagpagalan, pagpuyatan ng mga magkakasama. Ang pagsasaayos ng mga exhibits, paghahanda ng mga narratives nito, pagsasaayos ng kaniyang mga vitrine at mga display. Yung mismong exhibit development was such a very arduous task for every one of us. The editing of all the narratives, it was really such a feat for us. Kasi napakalaki ng ating museum, coming from the small museum at the front of the temple. And then suddenly, this 5-story building was conceptualized by our current executive minister, Brother Eduardo Manalo, to house the new INC Museum. You can see the architecture of the building, even from the outside. We can see there the INC, Iglesia ni Cristo, and then the 1914. So distinctive of
Exactly.
the Church of Christ.
Brother Jun, this is one obvious thing po that I basically...
Go ahead po.
There's one really obvious thing po that I've noticed po. So when it all began po, mula po sa kapatid ni Eranio Manalo, way back 1981, tama po ba?
Opo.
If I do recall also clearly, nabanggit niyo po during the pre-interview, it was just simply a corridor, tama po ba?
Yeah, a hallway.
A hallway at that.
A corridor, yes.
And then 3 years thereafter, from being a hallway, eto na yung Iglesia ni Cristo Gallery and Museum that was inaugurated 1984. So that was a big leap po. And then 2019 came, mas marami pa pong na-display natin kaya mas kailangan ng malaking area po for the museum. So there is really this obvious keen ng pamamahala even before sa panahon ng sugo hanggang sa kasalukuyan, that all the memorabilia po, the church memorabilia and the church artifacts has really to be preserved. Bakit ganun na lang po yung layunin nila?
Napakahalaga kasi na maisalin sa mga kabataang Iglesia ni Cristo, sa mga kapatid, sa mga bagong kaanib sa loob ng Iglesia, ang kasaysayan ng bayan ng Diyos. Kaya nga, sabi doon sa unang Korinto 10:11, ang mga ito'y nangasulat, ang mga pangyayari sa mga naunang lingkod ng Diyos, maging sa kasaysayan ng Iglesia ni Cristo ngayon. Naganap ang mga ito para sa ikatututo natin. Lalo tayong makaunawa, hindi lang sukat na makaunawa. What is more important for us is that we could feel deep inside the fulfillment and the faithfulness of God's promises. Here in the museum, just like Sister Bea said before, we can see the tangible evidence of how faithful God is to His promises in the church, the fulfillment of His prophecies, His promises from Brother Felix Manalo, God's messenger in these last days, the succeeding executive minister then, Brother Eranio Manalo, and until now, as history unfolds, Brother Randall, we can see. And we need to impart this so that they too may understand and also remember and consider deeply the history of the church.
Yes. Exactly.
And I believe po, Brother June, aside or apart from this Iglesia ni Cristo Museum that we have right now, there are also other sites po, heritage sites that you may want to mention po for our viewers.
Oh yes, definitely. There is a marker. There was this marker erected at the birth site of Ka Felix Manalo. We can see that in Tipas, Taguig, Metro Manila. Then it was Tipas, Taguig, Rizal. But now it's Tipas, Taguig, Metro Manila. And then we have the first local of the Iglesia ni Cristo at Punta Santa Ana. And the one we can see in our video is the heritage site of the Church of Christ in Eva Beach, Hawaii. The plantation house where the first worship service was conducted outside the Philippines.
No.
So in terms po, the museum actually exists not only to tell everyone po of what had happened to the church, but it's a good reminder that all the promises of our Lord God was in fact fulfilled to His one true church.
Yes.
Most definitely, Ka Randall. Most definitely.
Alright po. Okay, so we'd like to know po, syempre, marami pa din po, baka po marami po sa ating mga manonood po, hindi pa rin naman po nakapunta po sa INC Museum. So what can we see inside the INC Museum? Kasi po, sabi nga ni Kuya Randall kanina, from a corridor, lumipat po tayo sa isang, 1-story, 2-story po na INC Museum and Gallery, and now 5 stories, at meron pa po tayong heritage sites. So sa INC Museum alone po, what could be seen by our brethren po or guests that we would invite over as soon as we can po?
So here is the lobby of our new INC Museum. And then here at the lobby or the ground floor, there's what we call the orientation room. It's a big theater room where they will be oriented on what they can see inside and even the rules, the do's and the don'ts inside the museum. And then in the second floor, we can see there the timeline. It's a fast lane that we call it fast lane. We can see the timeline of the history of the church. And next to that are the greetings and letters. Yeah, there, you can see that in the video. The greetings and the letters, the accolades and the certificates that we receive from other organizations, even from government officials, because of the work of the church. Even our charity works, the aid to humanity there, we have our certificates and recognitions. Now, on the third floor, you can see there the historical section of the museum. Once you enter that gallery, you will be transformed to a new time frame.
Oh, wow.
Yes. As if time have turned its hand backward.
Medyo
Going
bibisita
back
po
into
tayo.
time po.
Early
Opo.
as 1913,
Nice.
you can see there a life-size diorama where Ka Felix Manalo started studying the Bible, and on that moment, the 3 days and the 3 nights, where God revealed to him the way of salvation through the Iglesia ni Cristo, the righteousness of God's salvation. Kung binabanggit sa wikang Tagalog, ang katwiran ng Diyos sa pagliligtas ay sa pamamagitan ng Iglesia ni Cristo. Nahayag yun sa kapatid na Felix Manalo. Nakadepict doon sa life-size diorama. And then, you can walk through history lane from the time of Ka Felix Manalo to the time of Ka Eranio Manalo and until our time, the time of Ka Eduardo Manalo, our executive minister.
Alright po.
So Brother Jun, what if they go there as a family? Kung may bata silang kasama, or because we know the museum, for the most part of it po, the adults, there's no brainer into it. Talaga, they get really so interested when they get inside the museum. Are there also places designated for kids or whatnot, Brother Jun?
Oh yes, for children, we have the INC Museum, Children's Museum, rather. We cater to all ages, just not for infants. For
Di ba muna?
toddlers.
Yes po.
Yeah,
Pwede
opo.
silang maglaro. Ayan, sabi nga din po, i-ano ko lang po para maano po natin kasi yung mga viewers po natin, Kajun, kanina pa po ay nagwe-welcome din po sila sa inyo dahil very eager po sila sa ating episode for tonight. Katulad po ng sabi po ni Ka Christaniel, ni Ka Teddy at ni Ka Romy, ay very eager din po silang makabisita po sa INC Museum soon. So if you may po pwede po bang i-promote po natin. Syempre, sa inyo na po pinakamagandang manggaling po, makapag-imbita po tayo sa ating mga kapatid at mga aanyayahan po.
Sa lahat po ng mga kapatid, even to our friends who are not members of the Iglesia ni Cristo, we are all inviting you. Once restrictions have been opened, places of heritage has been opened from the instruction of the government, we will welcome you to visit us here in the Iglesia ni Cristo Museum. You can see clearly the history of the church, how God worked for this church since the establishment until now.
Ayun. Thank you po, Kajun. And with that, we will take a short break po. And while we are taking a short break, eto po ay panoorin niyo po ang isa pong para din po sa inyo ito mga kapatid. So, Kuya Kevin, roll na po ang ating fast cuts and go!
Ang naiisip ko pong makikita ko sa pagpunta ko sa INC Museum ay ang mga mahalagang bagay at makasaysayang pangyayari sa loob ng Iglesia ni Cristo.
Ayun po, nakakapagbalik tanaw po kami sa ang mga nangyari po noon sa loob ng iglesia kasi pinapakita dun sa mga exhibit po yung mga iba't ibang kagamitan na ginamit po noon ng pamamahala.
Simula first level entrance up to last level exit, masasabi ko na sobrang sulit. Kumbaga kung ikukumpara sa pagkain, walang tapon, walang sayang, as in, naalala ko pagpasok pa namin doon. Pagpasok pa lang namin, wala kaming ibang sinabi, lahat kundi wow. Kasi ang ganda at ang ayos ng pagkakagawa. Makikita mo mga naging kasaysayan ng Iglesia ni Cristo.
Yung sa pasugo, yung naka-display po lahat ng mga versions po ng pasugo mula noong unang nailathala po ito. At saka yung kung saan nagmula yung salitang kung bakit siya pinangalan na pasugo. At yun nga po pala ay galing sa talata din sa Biblia.
Yung exhibit po kung saan yung mga kasangkapan o ginagamit ng ating sugo, ang kapatid na Felix Y. Manalo, sapagkat nakita ko po kung papaano naingatan ang mga kagamitan na ginamit noong unang panahon.
Kung meron mang isang lugar doon na hindi ko malilimutan, yun yung meron doong kubo kung saan may nakaplay doon na pangangasiwa ng kapatid na Felix Manalo. And merong upuan. Nung napadaan kami doon, napaupo kami. And para kaming dumadalo sa pagsamba na pinangangasiwaan ng kapatid na Felix Manalo. Kung pwede nga lang hindi na umalis doon, pakinggan na lang namin yung pangangasiwa. And meron pang isa doon na pagpasok mo, yun agad yung makikita mo. Meron doon na replika ng kapatid na Felix Manalo noong siya ay kumbaga nagbulay, nagkulong ng ilang araw sa kanyang kwarto. Meron doon replika and yung binisbasa ng kapatid ng Felix, ang kapatid na Eduardo Manalo noong siya ay bata pa.
Sobrang saya at saka napaka-grateful. Tuwing binabalik tanaw namin is thankful kami kasi nagkaroon kami ng opportunity para magbisita yung ganong kagandang museo sa loob ng iglesia.
Nung nakita namin yun, lahat kami napatulala. Parang naalala ko nung lahat nga ata kami napaluha. Dahil ang sarap sa pakiramdam, kung pwede nga lang kausapin, ginawa na namin. And masasabi ko na nadagdagan yung pananampalataya ko nung nakapunta kami doon sa INC Museum.
Ako po'y namangha dahil nakita ko po kung papaano naiayos at nailathala ang bawat istorya o pangyayari po noon. Masaya din po ang aking puso sapagkat pinalad po ako na ako ay makabisita sa ating pong museum.
And that is why we remember our church history. That is what we are speaking about today in this week's episode of UJ Radio. Please, whether you're tuned in on Facebook or YouTube, even INC TV, just go ahead and log on. Let us know your experiences, your memories, what you miss the most about your experience of being at the INC Museum. Until then, we want to say hi to Doksa Yango saying happy 12th anniversary po of dynamic leadership to our beloved executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. Greetings from the locale of Cabanatuan, District of Cabanatuan City, Nueva Ecija. Also from Chris Daniel Rocas, thank you so much for tuning in. He says, hello po mga kapatid, another important discussion this episode. Thank you as well. He's saying hi to all of us hosts and to our brother tonight joining us today, our special guest, Brother Jude. Well, also saying hi from the locale of Mayo Distrito ng Quezon.
Ayun. Alright. Kuya Randall, do you have a couple of greetings po? Galing comments?
I did mine in the first part.
Okay na po lang. Sige, I'll read one from Tom. Hello po, happy viewing po mga kapatid. Greetings po mula sa lokal ng San Marcos, distrito po ng Isabela West. Keep safe po mga kapatid. Kayo din po dyan, Ka Tom, and also from Ka Claudine. Magandang gabi po mga kapatid. Happy viewing po mula po sa lokal ng Kabaruan, distrito po ng Santo Tomas, Pangasinan. Ayun po. And last one from Kuya Chaser po. We are truly blessed to be led by our beloved Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. Good evening po mga ka-UJ and our dearest hosts. Greetings po mula sa lokal ng Salitran, distrito po ng Cavite South. And that's it for our shoutouts and comments for this moment po, because we will be going back to our topic discussion. Meron po kami mga itatanong po syempre kay Kajun. Syempre naman. Alright po. So, who's up next? Who's up next?
You do the next question there.
Alright.
I just want to go back po, Brother June. Take us back to the time of the inauguration po. When the first time the museum opened for the public, both for the brethren and non-members alike. Were there any prominent people po from our society that went, and what was their reaction?
Oh yes. During the public opening, we have so many guests from the public officials, members of the museum community here in the Philippines were present during the time. Actually, we were waiting for their comments after they went through the exhibit. What they said exactly, if I may be able to quote it, if my memory serves me right, they were so amazed on how the INC Museum were able to tie up the narrative of the Iglesia ni Cristo, and the artifacts and the historical memorabilia that we have here, and showcasing it and then exhibiting it for public consumption. They were able also to realize how state-of-the-art the interactive exhibits. And one thing that happened is that one of the comments of the visitors then, they were able to understand more deeply, lalo po nilang naintindihan ang malalim na kasaysayan ng Iglesia. Yun po bang from the humble beginnings na sa kabila ng hamak na kalagayan ng iglesia nung una sa panahong nagsisimula ang kapatid na Felix Manalo, pagkatapos dumaan ng maraming mga pagsubok, dumaan ng maraming takbo ng kasaysayan ng panahon, at dumating ngayon ng panahong ito ng kasalukuyan, nakita nila ang malalim na kasaysayan ng iglesia without preaching to them. They were able to realize that this indeed is a handiwork of the Lord Almighty.
Kuya Kyle?
Let's just let that sink in a little. I wanted that to sink in just a little bit but from 1914 June to now 2021, that's 107 years of church history.
And just Brother Kyle, still unfolding.
Yes.
And still unfolding. As we've said before, history is still in the making. History is happening now, especially now from 2020 alone. So much has happened. I mean, what we are doing right now at this very moment, June, how we are still able to do household worship services, how we are still able to be with you, being able to pick your memories and for you to share that information, not just with us hosts, but from our families and friends on the internet, of course, especially now from 20 to 21. Despite with all this technology happening, how does that help us both in remembering our church history from 1914 to 2021 with technology now? But I'm sure that it's an exponential way of us appreciating, not just remembering, but appreciating and honoring our church history.
Through the museum, we can really remember and understand clearly as history unfolds, and it was being kept and cared for by the museum. We start from acquiring pertinent historical memorabilia, artifacts, and specimens, and then conserving it. If there are some needed to be repaired, we repair it, the conservation work. And then we need to preserve it, preventing it from acquiring any damage. And then developing it into an exhibit with all our efforts, the teams and the collection, to present it for public viewing. And we can see, even as we talk at this moment, we are acquiring all things that has something to do with the history of the church, filing it, caring for it, and then when time comes that we need to exhibit this, say for example, the work of our executive minister for the past 10 years, we were able to collect that. And then after that, these 2 years of the pandemic now, we're still collecting of all the works of the church so that we could preserve it for the next generation and all for those new members of the Iglesia ni Cristo.
You mentioned something very specific, Po, June, in what you just said, especially as we celebrate this special week of September in commemorating the 12th year of leadership of our dear executive minister. Now, one of the specific exhibits inside the museum is a big wall. If you could just try to, help us understand it more with the 10 years of the itinerary of our executive minister. He's been traveling very, very far and wide.
Exactly.
Yes, Brother Kyle. We have this wall dedicated for the 10-year timeline of Eduardo, our executive minister, pastoral visits, inaugurations, ordination, chapel dedication. For that 10 years, we have counted the events, around 554 listed in that wall for the first 10 years of our executive minister's work. Every week, He's working, visiting members here in the Philippines, remote places in the Philippines, and all over the world. We can see that clearly in that wall of the itinerary of our executive minister.
Now, for our guests, the wall is about 10 feet by 20 feet.
Mhm.
And Po Kajun, we were talking earlier, the font is very small.
Oh,
Right? Yes, because he's traveled so much. Like you said, every week. I cannot imagine. Brother Randall is a pilot himself, and he knows. And for all of us who have traveled in an airplane, how tiring it could be.
Exactly.
Especially with the time difference, Brother Kyle, Brother June, and
Aba.
Bea. But the big difference, and this I was really way surprised upon, because when we get to the destination, we normally are so tired that we really have to crash on our beds and get some rest. But on the part of the church administration po, sa kapatid ni Eduardo V. Manalo, instead of getting some rest after a long-haul flight, they'd rather have to be somewhere else to talk to all the officers of the church, mga siwa ng mga pagsamba, and do all the meetings and whatever their agenda would be for the sake and love of the brethren. So just imagine, Brother June, Brother Kyle, Sister Bea, and to all our viewers, na meron pa po kayang pahingang matatawag ang kapatid na Eduardo V. Manalo.
And to add to that, Brother Randall, whenever our executive minister travel, he crosses not only lands, seas, time zones, weather,
Yes.
and the climate, from one climate to another.
So, for example, maybe the climate of Africa or South Africa to where would the next stop be? With Russia, maybe, or another country. It's the climate change is very difficult. It's inspired and inspiring leadership.
Exactly.
We could make mention, Brother Kyle, of the verse
Apa.
in Romans 1:11. It says there in the New Living Translations, "For I long to visit you, so I can bring you some spiritual gift that will help you grow strong in the Lord."
Yes. Exactly.
Perhaps po, that could be the mere reason of all the travels, the sacrifices po of our executive minister. And one thing I also would like to take notice po is this 10-year itinerary po of Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. Perhaps kung hindi po tayo pumasok sa pandemic, perhaps this could even be more. It's just that the pandemic was one of the reasons kung kaya't hindi na po sila nakapaglakbay. Of course, also to adhere with the safety protocols, with the new normal that we really have to put ourselves into. Tama po ba, Kaju?
Yes, Brother Randall. And mind you, even during this time of pandemic, our executive minister was never hindered in doing his pastoral visitations, shepherding the entire flock. He's always there, present, teaching us, leading us in the worship service, even during this time of pandemic.
Exactly po.
I could also tell po, Kajuno, with what Brother Kyle mentioned earlier, that this times, the pandemic times, the new normal that we have, we're utilizing new ways to communicate. So perhaps in the years to come, baka makita natin maging kabilang doon sa museum is yung mga ginawa natin of how to overcome all these trials just so we can continue our services. Siguro magkakaroon tayo ng spot doon sa museum. Sasagawa tayo ng online worship services. And we expect that one po, Kaju.
Brother Randall, we will take that into note. Yeah, we will
Makikita
take
natin
note of
yan.
that. We will take note of that definitely.
Thank
We
you po.
will be
Perhaps-
having that section in our museum.
That's true. Opo. That would be
Madami.
really nice.
Yes.
And
Madami po.
alongside those pastoral visitations, po Kajun, there were also very more than a handful of other activities done po, and other projects launched as well.
Exactly. At saka po madami din pong naihandog na mga kapilya, mga naipaparepair. Kahit po medyo paiba-iba po tayo, nag-iba-iba po yung ating guidelines po or restriction protocols po sa Pilipinas. We make do talaga po. Kasi po, kailangan po talaga ng mga kapatid na meron pa din pong mapupunta ang gusaling sambahan. When the time comes na po, pwede na po. And with this po, syempre po, doon na po tayo sa, medyo ito na po syempre, hindi lang naman po, we are not just remembering our church history with this episode for tonight po. Kaya din po ang kasama po namin na isa pong ministro ng Ebanghelyo, syempre po, is because we want to commemorate po, syempre yung 12 years po ng pangunguna po sa atin, ng pamamahala po sa atin ng ating tagapamahalang pangkalahatan. And with this po, Kajun, we'd like to know din po, parang, ito po kasing INC Museum is a way po hindi po ba, na para maalagaan po tayo. Diba? Ipinapasa po natin yun pong church history sa mga kasunod po nating henerasyon. In return po, what do you think po can we do para po, what else can we do po para po ipakita pa po natin yung pagpapahalaga at pagmamahal po sa ating namamahala?
Ang unang-una dyan ay ang ating pagsunod sa mga kalooban ng Diyos. Yan ang unang-una. Kasi ang lagi talagang itinuturo sa atin ng ating tagapamahalang pangkalahatan ay ang pagsunod. Sumampalataya tayo, sumunod tayo sa lahat ng mga kalooban ng Diyos. Umasa tayo sa pangako, sa biyayang mapapasa atin. At alagaan natin ang ating pagka-iglesia ni Kristo. Patibayin natin ang ating mga sarili. Siguro ang isang madaragdag pa ng mga kapatid na magagawa naman nilang tangible naman ay kung meron silang mga naiingatang larawan, Sister Bea.
Opo.
Kung meron silang mga naiingatang larawan na may historical
significance po.
Historical value, ay ingatan nila at kung papayagan nila ay i-communicate nila dito sa amin sa INC Museum para aming maingatan, maitalaga at magamit para sa kapakanan pa rin ng nakararami.
Ayan po. So, ayan mga kapatid, sa mga meron po, baka sa mga lolo't lola po ninyo, may naitabi pa na mga larawan po na baka nga po black and white pa yan, o baka po kasama po ang sugo, o yung mga dati po nating kapilya, ayan po, maikontak na lang po sa ating INC Museum para po makita rin po ng mga kasunod pa sa atin, balang araw po. And
Bea, there's one thing also that we also wanted to stress out. It's not just basically about photos, mga larawan. Like na-mention po ng Kajun sa atin, even yung mga ginagamit natin. Halimbawa, yung unang pagsamba sa lokal ninyo, you could actually donate it po to the INC Museum. Like what Brother June mentioned during our pre-interview, pati po yung mga ginamit nila sa unang Santa Cena ay naitabi.
Opo,
yes.
makikita po natin.
Yes. Mula pa yan sa pag-iingat ng panahon ng sugo. Nung mamatay na ang kapatid na Felix Manalo, sa kasaysayan noong 1963, and then a year after that, 1964, is our 50th anniversary. We have the 50th anniversary issue of the Pasugo. It was published there, the very first utensils used during the first Holy Supper of the Iglesia ni Cristo. So during the time of Ka Felix Manalo, talagang naingatan ang gamit na yon. At hanggang ngayon ay deposited here and exhibited here in our INC Museum.
Yes. Yeah. And I do think, wait lang po kasi si Kuya Kyle parang may itatanong pa si Kuya Kyle. Parang may iniisip pa siya. Kuya Kyle, do you have a question?
It's a little problem with my internet. I just wanted to say so that we may never forget, especially with, for example, I remember going to one of the exhibits and seeing the desks that were being used and even the fountain pens. I'm a pen guy, so I remember seeing that exhibit. So it's even if it's 2021 and we may take for granted where we are now, it's always very awe-inspiring to be able to look back to see where we've come from, where we are now, and of course we have so much more to go ahead and move forward.
Yes, exactly.
And let me just add, mga kapatid, here in our museum we are exercising preservation and conservation in its highest standard. We have the state-of-the-art monitoring system, environmental monitoring system, a real-time monitoring system of the environment inside the museum, inside the storage, the compactor, that those who work in the museum understand. We monitor them so closely that they only have to reach certain level of temperature and certain level of relative humidity so that we could preserve and take care so precisely our heritage, our historical artifacts that we care and store here in the INC Museum.
So even after 107 years po, June, the next generations, the following generations will be able to appreciate what we have po.
Definitely, Brother Kyle. If God would permit that the world will still exist another 100 years, God willing, this museum and this collection of the church museum still be existing at the time, presenting to the Iglesia ni Cristo and to all of the people on the time.
Thank you very much po, June. Now we'll leave this time for you po. If you have any greetings or any words left to say as well to our audience and to those watching.
To all of our viewers, mga kapatid sa loob ng iglesia, kapag ka po nagbukas na ang museum, iniimbitahan po namin kayo na makasama, makapunta po kayo rito para kayo po mismo ang siyang makadama sa puso natin ng katuparan ng mga pangako ng Diyos sa iglesia. At ngayon, habang pandemya, naipaglilingkod po namin ang ating INC Museum sa pamamagitan po ng INC Museum Virtual Tour Series. Nasa YouTube po channel ng INC Museum ang 10 videos for the first season. And we are now working on the second season of this virtual tour series.
Ayan po. Excited po kami na mapanood po yan. Alam ko po sa mga kapisanan po, ipinapalabas din po yan. Nagkakaroon po ng, kumbaga, nag-viewing po kami ng magkakasama po sa mga kapisanan, sa mga kapatid. Abangan niyo po ang ating second season. Ayan po. Kasi po, kahit pa paano po ay nakakalabas po, nakakapasyal po kami sa INC Museum habang naghihintay po kami. And of course po, ito pong lahat ay hindi po magiging posible kundi po sa pangunguna ng ating tagapamahalang pangkalahatan na sila po nagdiriwang na kanila pong ika-12 anibersaryo ng pangunguna. So with that po, June, gusto po namin sana, syempre po, pagbati niyo po para po sa ating kapatid na Eduardo V. Manalo po. The floor is yours po.
Sa pinakamamahal po naming kapatid na Eduardo Manalo, sa amin pong tagapamahalang pangkalahatan, taimtim po kaming bumabati, kasama po ang aking sambahayan, kasama po ang lahat ng naglilingkod sa INC Museum. At kalaki po ang aming taimtim na panalangin sa Panginoong Diyos, na mamalagi po kayong maningning na tanglaw, magiting na bantay, sa unahan po ng aming paglalakbay hanggang sa sama-sama po tayong makarating sa pangakong bayang banal. Happy 12th anniversary po, kapatid na Eduardo V. Manalo.
Maraming salamat. Okay, so salamat po, Brother June. And to wrap up everything po, remembering the history of the church is a way to acknowledge and celebrate the fulfillment of God's prophecy to the one true church. And all of this is possible and had happened because God is always faithful and true to His promises. Tapat po ang Diyos sa kanyang pangako. And this is exactly more and more evident under the 12 years of dynamic and victorious leadership of our current church administration sa pangunguna po ng kapatid na Eduardo V. Manalo. And for tonight's Bible verse, let's listen to what the Bible has to say.
Remember your leaders who taught you the Word of God. Think of all the good that has come from their lives and follow the example of their faith.
To our dearest Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, the words thank you are not enough to express our gratitude to our Almighty God for placing you as our leader.
We truly feel God's blessings through your genuine love and concern for the entire church, especially now that we are going through very trying times.
We always pray that God continues to guide you and bless you with the best of health as you shepherd his nation until we all reach the perfection of our faith and be worthy of his promised salvation. We love you so much, Paul.
We thank our dear brother June Cortez again for guesting tonight on this special episode of UJ Radio, and of course our family and our friends watching on INC TV and on INC PC's Facebook page and YouTube channel. We're looking forward to seeing you again next Saturday. More good stuff coming your way, same time as same place. And please do remember to like what we share with you so that it keeps going out to our family and our friends. We'll see you again next Saturday at 8 p.m.
Yes, and of course with that po, hindi pa po natatapos ang ating 12th anniversary po na specials po para sa ating pong kapatid na Eduardo V. Manalo. And of course with that po, we have here Songs of Faith, Love and Hope, Kadiwa and Binhi International Edition po. Ito po, announcement na po ng ating top 30 tomorrow, Sunday, 5 p.m. on INC TV, and of course 8 p.m. po on INC Production Company's Facebook page and YouTube channel. Okay, nabubulo na po ako. We have Spotlight Season 6 po, Sunday, 7 p.m. You're invited, a musical presentation. Panoorin niyo po yan mga kapatid. After po niyan, we have the season premiere po of INCMV by request Tuesday, September 7, starting at 1 p.m. And tuloy-tuloy na po yan. We have the executive news special Tuesday, 7 p.m. naman po yan mga kapatid. At para po mapanood niyo po yan lahat, syempre po, don't forget to like, subscribe, share po sa ating INC Production Company Facebook page and YouTube channel para po lahat yan mapanood nyo. Stay updated with our various activities, programs, and concerts, and the latest INCMVs. And with that po, mga kapatid, we will leave you with this last INCMV medley po ng Awit, Sa Pamamahala, Aming, Namamahala, Kaisa Niyo po kami, and Salamat Po kay Eduardo mula po sa In Concert Distrito po ng Western Europe. Enjoy that po mga kapatid. Salamat po sa inyong lahat, and we'll see you again next Saturday. Bye-bye!
Bye-bye po.
Bye.
Salamat sa ating Ama, kami may namamahala. Lagi niyo kaming tinuturuan na sa Diyos ay magtiwala. Lagi po kayong napapaalala na kami di dapat mabahala. Ilagak ang pag-asa sa biyayang darating.
Amin pong namamahala, sa pagpapayo sa amin di kayo nagsasawa. Ang aral ng Diyos sa amin ay pinauunawa na manindigan kami na gawin kung ano ang tama.
Namamahala po kayo na may integridad. Kayo po ang huwala namin sa aming pagtupad. Naglulunsad kayo ng mga aktibidad. Sa layunin na kami ay maging masigla at matatag.
Malayo man kayo sa piling namin di hadlang. Kamusta na kami? Yun ang lagi niyong inaalam. Kami po'y laging kaisa. Nagpapakasigla di nagsasawa na lumapit. Manalangin sa Ama.
Nasanay, ingatan po kayo sa bawat sandali. Palakasin, patatagin, bawat oras patnubayan. Kaisa niyo po kami tungo po sa kaligtasan. At pangako namin kailanman ay hindi kami lalaban.
Niyo kami ang laging iman. Iniisip palagi aming kapakanan. Kahit buhay man ninyo, nakahandang ilaan. Maingatan lang kami,
may mga lumaban at may mga nanira. Tinangkang pinsalain ang inyong pamamahala. Nagsalita ng salitang masasama. Hindi sila nagtagumpay at sila'y napahiya.
Bumangon na mga huwad na mananampalataya. Nagtangka na sirain natin pagkakaisa. Pinili ninyo kami higit sa kanila. Hindi kayo pumayag na kami masaktan nila.
Kami lubusan po na magtatapat. Taglay ang taos pusong galak. Nakahanda kaming lahat magtiyaga, magpagal upang aming madama ang inyong ngitit pagmamahal.
Pangako po namin sa Diyos habang may buhay patlakas hanggat kami mga hinirang at hanggang wakas puspusan po na susunod magpapasakop ng ganap ng upang sa paghuhukom maligtas po kaming lahat.
Kaisa niyo po kami sa pagtupad ng tungkulin. Gagawin po namin ang pagsisika sa masagang
ay bumangon at sa amin ay umabot na itinuturing naming isa matinding pagsubok. Pinatunayan po sa amin ng pag-ibig nyo, kaya pangako pwede kami aalis sa tabi nyo.
Ka Eduardo, marami pong salamat sa inyo pagkat sa gitna ng lahat kami po ang pinili nyo at sinisinop nyo upang kami ay mapangunahan, kami ay susunod at hindi lalaban.
Magpapasako po at puspusan na susunod upang sa ating amay lubusan ng makalugod. Sa panawagan nyo kami ay lagi po natutugon. Gusto namin maligtas sa araw ng paghuhukom.
At nung sinabi niyong ang buhay niyo'y ilalaan sa amin, mamamatay na muna bago kami pinsalain. Hindi kami papayag na mangyari po iyon. Kami sa paning nyo, kayo ay aming ipagtatanggol.
Salamat po, kami ay tunay na mahal niyo. Para sa amin ay hanggang ibigay, lakas at buhay. Sa Diyos pangalan